In today's episode of the Pathway Presents podcast, I got a very interesting guest here with me today, with Jennifer Kattar, and she's hailing over from the folks over at Realtime Agency. And if you head over to their page, realtimeagency.com, you will see that they provide digital scientists at your fingertips. And today we want to really deep dive into what Realtime is all about, how Jennifer is thinking about growth for the company, and a little bit about her journey in marketing. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucas.
Of course, yeah. So maybe let people know a little bit more about real time. What is it all about in your own words?
Yeah, sure. So Realtime is an independent digital performance ads agency, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of those on this podcast, but we do have a little bit of a special twist. So, as you mentioned, we are primarily focused on scientific method. So we actually kind of refer to ourselves a bit more as a lab rather than an agency. So I can kind of explain what I mean with that when I say that. But with a lot of agencies, you are gonna kind of get this test and learn cycle where you maybe get really good results on a campaign, and you're like, all right, I want to do that again, and then you kind of quickly find out that performance isn't replicable the next time around. Maybe your campaign isn't doing well, or maybe it's kind of doing fine, but you really can't figure out what the next step is to getting even better performance. And so, what you're actually usually seeing here, and this typically goes overlooked, is that learnings that are being extracted are being built fully on correlation, meaning that the two or more variables that you're looking at are not actually having an impact on one another, but they're just kind of moving in the same direction by chance. So, if we kind of look at how that translates back to how we operate, this could mean that a brand is investing a lot of money in certain decisions that they're making because they think that they found a learning that's going to produce really strong results, but those strong results are completely dependent upon factors that they're not even looking at. So that's
Mhm.
kind of like a house of cards that at some point is going to fall. You can waste a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of resources that way. So what we've done is we've built an agency completely comprised of digital scientists. Obviously people like our analysts, our media managers, those should be digital scientists because those are the ones in the weeds of the data, but the rest of our team is as well. So for instance, we have an audience architecture team who's responsible for, helping clients build out first party data, sourcing and cleaning third party data, stuff like that. We've got a creative team who's all digital scientists because they need to be able to adapt our assets based off of statistically valid data and kind of build out testing strategies that are going to return useful learnings. And then we also have a measurement team who kind of supports on some of the more intricate test and learns where a deeper level of knowledge of statistics is necessary.
Makes a lot of sense. So very data-driven approach that people can expect with real time. What would be the typical types of clients you would be working with? Like, is there a certain size, certain industries? Like,
Uh,
what is a great fit for real time?
Yeah, so we've got a pretty healthy mix across the board. We sort of range from, I mean, everything from e-com to finance to healthcare and wellness to energy. We span across both B2C and B2B. We've got experts on kind of both ends of the coin. Um, and I would say, we do, when we're qualifying leads, we do kind of have a specific size in mind. And primarily that's just because we have so many different kinds of specialist pods that can step in. Like we really have a very robust team that there really is not any mystery that we can't solve. So we do need, a certain level of spend to kind of be able to justify or be able to staff the team for those sorts of issues. Um, but I also think, in just talking about qualifying businesses, I think there's also kind of this element of, us maybe kind of qualifying ourselves and, making sure that when we're deciding if we want to work with a brand, that we are also asking ourselves, is this something that we think that we can handle? And I think part of the issue is we are such a new agency that um, it's we're still kind of building out what we think our offering should be. Obviously, at first we were primarily social, and then we started getting requests for programmatic and SEO. So we started building out those teams. So now we have programmatic clients and SEO clients, and then influencer marketing and affiliate marketing was taking off. So we found a way to create an offering there that we didn't think other agencies we're offering. And so now we've got, clients coming for influencer work. And in particular, I think over the past couple of years, attribution has been a massive issue, especially with the rollout of Apple's iOS 14.5, which happened, a couple of years ago, but it's still massively impacting brands. And so, then we started getting work because many brands were having issues with attribution and needed our services for that. So it really is such a wide range of work that we cover. And I think we do a pretty good job of, when we get RFPs, or we get potential clients who want to work with us on something that we don't think that we can handle. I think we do a great job of kind of saying, we don't know if we're the best fit for that.
Gotcha. Makes a whole lot of sense. Now, who would you say then, who's the actual individual within those organizations, right? Is that sort of, a marketer himself, or is that maybe even a leader high up in the chain that needs to bring in that data-driven approach that you guys are bringing to the table? Who would be sort of, yeah, your typical champion, let's say, within those organizations?
Yeah, I would say typically we're working with maybe director level and below on a day-to-day basis. So, that could be the analyst that's, if we're working with a brand that has an internal ads team, we could be working with their analysts to kind of support on what they're running. Occasionally, often we don't work with brands who have any sort of internal support. So the people that we're working with could be C-suite, it could be the CMO, or it could be the CEO directly. It really does vary for us, and we're kind of set up to support either.
Gotcha. Makes a whole lot of sense. Now, let's talk a little bit about how people learn about real-time agency. Like, what's typically their journey looking like? Like, what's maybe the channels that they walk through in order to get started with you guys?
So right now we are primarily getting business through referrals, which I think makes a lot of sense. Just because we're a performance agency, I think, we are really good at kind of getting clients onto a progress path with performance. Typically, when clients work with us, they are seeing better and better and better performance the more that they work with us, because we're optimizing, obviously.
Mhm.
So the work really does speak for itself. And then I think, happy clients or happy partners want to share those results with other brands and agencies, or sometimes even friends. And with that being said, the marketing team is pretty new, like I've said. I came into this role in 2020, and we didn't even have a marketing team at that point. So we started from the ground up in 2020. And so we've had to really try a lot of different things to see what sticks. So for instance, I was talking to our sales team, someone on our sales team recently, and this is someone who I think is super well versed in the industry. They've been around a lot longer than myself, and they were letting me know that cold outreach just really is not working like it used to, which I also think makes sense because the space is so saturated.
Mhm.
So what we're really trying to do right now is we're trying to focus on placing value first and kind of identifying leads through those interactions and those channels. So for instance, we run webinars every few months. We've actually got one coming up next week. And then on top of that, we pair those webinars with one-to-one workshops for brands that want to take advantage of them. So, these are completely free, by the way, both the webinars and the workshops. And it's a little bit risky because technically those brands could join the one-to-one workshops and then, kind of take our tips and run and never speak to us again. But more often than not, brands are going to join those because they are having a serious issue that they don't have the experience themselves to solve. And maybe it's something like they can't get e-com ads working, or the cookie and attribution issues that everyone in the ads industry is facing is throwing a huge wrench into their campaigns, and their CMOs demanding to know why they should keep investing in social or something like that.
Mhm.
So it's things like that where we can really give value, and we can give these tips and tricks to kind of get them back on their feet. And eventually, they are going to need someone in there that can kind of keep the momentum going. So if we can kind of partner and provide that solution, we're absolutely there to help. And I think that's kind of how we're focused on, having a bit more of a pull and less of a push approach, bringing people to us and providing that value and kind of qualifying, where we could potentially step in from there.
Gotcha. Actually, you brought up the cookieless future, and sort of on a side note there, like what do you see? Like what do you see in terms of what are clients concerned about? Like, I mean, of course, Google has been pushing back some of their changes, and specifically in regards to third-party cookies. Like, maybe just high level, like what do you see your clients asking or thinking about when it comes to that topic?
Yeah. So, and for those of you who I guess are listening and don't exactly know, the reason that this is such a critical issue is because it means that advertisers and marketers are going to have huge issues attributing things like sales or conversions, leads, downloads, whatever it might be. And typically, this is a bigger issue for lower funnel KPIs, but they're going to have a massive issue attributing that to their spend. So it's going to look like, any advertising or marketing efforts that you're making really are not producing any results, which then, your CMO is going to be like, well, why are we investing in, all these different channels if you can't really justify why you're spending there. So typically, what we had seen from our clients, and keep in mind, we were prepared for this well before it happened. So, for our clients, we had tailored plans put in place around a year before even iOS 14.5 rolled out. We were very prepared for that. And the things that we've seen are obviously kind of immediate nosedives. It's a little bit random. Sometimes we saw an immediate nosedive, after significant changes like the iOS 14.5 rollout.
Mhm.
And when Google completely deprecates cookies, we may see further nosedives. But the ways that we've sort of helped and stepped in and protected against a lot of loss of data is we have an audience team, like I mentioned. We call it audience architecture. And they are really focused on kind of helping clients build out their first party data so that it's relatively protected, because first party data isn't reliant on isn't completely reliant on cookies. Zero party data, which is when customers are kind of opting into giving that information. And third party data can be really helpful as well, if you've got a very clean set of data. Creative is also massively, massively important. I think this is something a lot of people overlook, but of course we kind of tout this all the time to our clients. Some people may not know just how important it is, but just to give an example, on Facebook, creative is responsible for 60% of performance. So if you've got great messaging and great audiences and great placements and all this stuff, even if you've got all that, if your creative is outdated or bad or just not relevant, your campaign is going to completely tank. So those are kinds of the things we hear our clients concerned about, that we definitely have the solutions where we can step in and help, and we would absolutely recommend anyone out there that's kind of struggling with fears about cookie deprecation or issues with pixels on paid social, kind of looking at your audience strategy and looking at your creative strategy.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, what I'm maybe last question in that direction, what I'm curious about is, once you see your clients generating all of the traffic to the pages, right? That really smart campaigns, like, what have you seen in the last couple of years or even months, maybe because it changes so drastically, when it comes to driving results, driving conversions? Is there any approaches, methods, tools that you've seen your clients, working with?
Yeah. So I would say there's probably a couple. The first one, just in terms of, I mean, let's start maybe from the ground up, just in terms of tracking that and, kind of understanding where, what approaches are actually driving conversions.
Mhm.
So we, for a lot of our clients, have advised them to begin using MMM or marketing mix modeling, rather than multi-touch attribution, which is kind of the standard way a lot of agencies and brands track attribution, and have been, for many years now. And so, when we found that in cases where we've been using MMM, and we've used various tools like Meta has an MMM tool called Robin, which is their modeling software. It's pretty user friendly. You do kind of need someone who understands statistics to use it, but anyone can kind of go in and use it. But when we've been advising clients to use MMM, we've actually been able to, massively, massively boost results by using the MMM, the product of that model, as a way to inform where we should be putting budget. So, should we be putting more budget, into search or into Facebook, or, are certain, promotions or promo codes or whatever it might be really driving a ton of traffic and a ton of hype. And when we've used that, we've noticed that we've been able to significantly boost ROAS a lot more than when we were just relying on MTA. So
Hmm.
that's number one. I think number two, uh, dynamic elements that are being offered by, and this is maybe more for paid social, but dynamic elements that are offered by, Facebook, let's say, uh, are getting very, very smart and very, very efficient. So things like dynamic overlays, for instance, or a dynamic overlay might be you are using your product catalog to kind of segment out how you want to target people. Maybe you want to target people who have bought a certain pair of pants with the matching top, and so you use your catalog to kind of build out that segmentation. Dynamic overlays might, speak specifically to an audience, or speak specifically to the demographic, or speak specifically to the sale, or whatever it might be. So there are a lot of dynamic elements now that are coming out that can really, and again, in the wake of this loss of cookie and pixel help, it's becoming harder and harder to kind of speak specifically to the person that you're targeting, because you don't exactly know who they are now with all
Hmm.
these losses. So being able to kind of just have extra help and extra tools to really create a tailored message is super helpful, and I think something everyone should be taking advantage of.
Just for maybe wrapping up on that topic, like when you mentioned the MMA model, like how on super high level, how would you say the mixed marketing model differs to other attribution models in its core?
Yeah, so multi-touch attribution is reliant on the individual user's path being tracked, and that happens through cookies. So a person may see your ad on Facebook, and then maybe they see a search ad on Google. And then maybe they get an email for a sale, and then they go to the website and they make a purchase. So MTA kind of tracks all of those individual bits that user went through in their journey. And then, there are a few different ways that you can attribute. You can do like first touch or last touch, or there are different ways, but it's built on the individual user journey. MMM is more looking at overall trends of groups of people, understanding how much you've invested in certain channels or tactics, and kind of looking at, the overall trend of those people, how many sales were made around a certain time when you made, a certain adjustment.
Hmm.
MMM and MTA both produce hypotheses. They're a little bit different in how they do that. Obviously, MMM is not based on cookies. It's based on kind of overall groups of people, user behavior, not individual user behavior.
Hmm.
But ultimately, they both produce hypotheses. So the one thing that you do kind of need to layer on with MMM, which we definitely do, again, because we're a performance agency, we need to make sure data is super clean. But because it's possible that you might get a result out of MMM that's again built on correlation, meaning two variables are just happen to be moving with each other, they're not actually impacting each other. You typically want to pair this with experimentation, so some sort of cell test with holdouts. That way you can be sure that the variable that you're looking at that you want to see if is making a difference, such as Facebook spend,
Hmm.
you can ensure that that is the actual variable that's driving the changes that you're seeing in your cost pers.
Very good. Really appreciate that little excurse here for people who are listening, and very awesome. I want to wrap it up right with the last question. We've been deep diving into very interesting topics today. Definitely shows the depth of knowledge that you folks over have at real time. What I'm curious about is just the very last thing is, and I like to ask that every guest on the show, if we do a little bit of time travel and we go back to the days of New York University, right? You're heading out of formal education into the world of business and marketing. What's the one advice you would give yourself for your journey as a marketer?
I think that's a really interesting question, because so my background actually isn't in marketing. I've been in the ad space for around a decade now, but I've always been on the ad side. So I've always kind of been running campaigns for clients and being client facing.
Mhm.
But a few years ago, and this is kind of a funny story, but when I started working for Realtime, I started as part-time, and I'm still part-time, because the rest of the time I actually work as an influencer. So up until recently, I've had, kind of 10 years of ads knowledge under my belt. But the
Mhm.
extent of the marketing knowledge that I had was really just kind of marketing myself and building a brand for myself.
Mhm.
But I hadn't done that in a corporate setting or, for a company yet. So A couple years ago when I took on this role, I was sort of thinking to myself, real time doesn't have any marketing going on right now. When you've done this for yourself and you've grown followings across all these platforms and you've won yourself repeat clients and made, kind of an overall brand that's working. So couldn't you do that for real time? So that's how I moved into this role. And it was interesting because it's almost as if I came in at a junior role, even though I wasn't junior. I've been in this space for a very long time, but everything was sort of new in that sense because I hadn't done it before. And I
Hmm.
do think I doubted myself a lot, which was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a really long time. Because, when you're really well versed in a space, you can sort of do it in your sleep. There really is not any situation you can't like, navigate. But I was really nervous to kind of make leaps or big decisions that I thought might be too strong one way or another, which is odd because I feel very comfortable doing that with my own branding. I'm kind of a big fan of off the wall marketing. I love kind of crazy big ideas. And I do think you need to be somewhat fearless in strategy. If you're in marketing, you kind of need to trust that a weird idea isn't a weird idea if it works.
Hmm.
Personally, I love things that kind of get attention, things that have the potential to go viral. I'm a huge advocate for that old adage, which is if you're speaking to everyone, you're not speaking to anyone. You're speaking to no one rather. And I do kind of wish that I had the courage early on to like liberate that piece of myself a bit more. And you can see it now. If you go to our website, you can kind of see our first promo video, which is this incredible video where our team is in this lab kind of creating Frankenstein's monster and training it to do all these kind of like superhuman things, which is a bit of a metaphor for kind of how we create our campaigns. But that was the result of me just sort of pitching these crazy ideas to our CEO, which is funny because of course his role is to be as protective as possible over the company, and he was probably like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into by giving this girl the marketing head role? But in fact, that Frankenstein video was sort of the catalyst for our mad scientist identity now. So we'll frequently pull out test tubes and beakers and lab coats and things like that for pitches, and occasionally we paint one of our team members green and kind of dress them up like Frankenstein's monster. So yeah, I do wish I had the courage early on to do that, but we're there now, so it's good.
Awesome. Very cool. Jennifer, I really appreciate you joining us on the Pathmark Presents podcast today. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about real time today, what's the one thing people should remember?
The one thing that people should remember, I think, well, so we are a lab. We're not an agency. And I think it's kind of like when people are like, oh, remember this face because you're going to see it again soon. I think we've, in all seriousness, we've grown so much over the past few years and things are going extremely well. Especially lately, it feels like we're kind of always getting featured somewhere. And, I think this fast movement is primarily due to the fact that we don't gatekeep anything. So we sort of, we've got this lab, we kind of peel back the curtain and we just invite anyone that wants to watch to come and watch. And that's because we genuinely want to inspire innovation in the space. The advancement of one could kind of mean the advancement of many. And so we're happy for others to follow in our footsteps because we are, really kind of sprinting full speed ahead.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathmark Presents.
Thank you so much, Lucas.